So I got around to watching How I Met Your Mother season 4 episode 9 titled The Naked Man, and as I found myself stunned at the audacity of Mitch, Marshall, Ted, do I even have to count Barney at this point because this is basically the type of thing he pulls off on the regular. But anyway, as I was stunned at the audacity of these characters and the conclusion that was the mess that is the end of this episode, the one thing that kept echoing in my head was a single question of is How I Met Your Mother maybe punishing Robin for her choice to not end up with Ted? Because what in the bullshit? Now, before I go into the rant that is today's video, I would like to get the introductions out of the way. If this is your first time stumbling upon my channel or this particular series of mine, hello, I'm Noria and welcome to my How I Met Your Mother video series, where I'm currently documenting my first time ever watch of the show while sharing my thoughts as I go along in a stream of consciousness style analysis where I talk about these characters and their choices, try to analyze their behavior and make guesses about how events might play off in the future based off of my thoughts on how the story is progressing so far and what I learn about these characters with every new episode I watch. As such, I will like to reiterate that this really is my first time watching the show, and I have so far been able to stay away from all discussions as it pertains to How I Met Your Mother and its characters. So, what you are in fact getting really is a blind reaction to a series that finished airing years ago. And from what I've been able to gather, you all have enjoyed watching me taking the show and the characters as I guess my way in the dark about how things might play out or have played out. And as such, I will like to ask that you please continue to abstain from dropping any spoilers in the comments. I appreciate the work you all have put in so far to keep things spoiler free from me. Thank you. If you do want to say something or discuss something that addresses a point I made or raised, but which you know veers into spoiler territory, just give the spoilers ahead warning followed by a bunch of asterisks so I can see it and I would not accidentally get spoiled while scrolling by, and so I can ignore the comment whilst other subscribers or non-subscribers who are watching my videos can interact with your comment and you all can chat about how right or wrong I am and what I successfully noticed or didn't notice in my discussions. And for those who are keeping track, I've currently watched up to How I Met Your Mother season 4 episode 9. Plus, if this is your first time stumbling on one of these videos, kindly know that I do have a format where I split the video into three parts: the intro, the synopsis, and then finally my thoughts. As such, I have included timestamps to help you navigate the video as you so choose. But before I get into the synopsis part of the video, I would like to say a big thank you to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of last year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Lina, Sherry, and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses too. Mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. And with that said, How I Met Your Mother season 4 episode 9 titled The Naked Man starts with Ted as always talking to his kids and sharing the information slash data he had gathered from his friends about how long it takes for them to get over a breakup. They all give different answers that range from weeks to, in Robin's case, 10,000 drinks spread over as long as needed. And for Barney, the duration of time it takes for him to say goodbye to a woman after having had sex with her. Ted, though, ends up showing us his own process. It starts with him slowly striking up a conversation with the woman he keeps running into in the elevator in the building that houses his architectural firm. They start from eye contact to short greetings until Ted finds himself spilling all the details with regards Stella leaving him at the altar, and then he takes a breath, starts all over again, and asks the woman, Vicky, if she would like to have dinner with him. She says yes. He heads home after work and opens the door to the apartment to find Mitch, Robin's blind date, sitting on the couch, butt naked, which, ew, gross. They have a very awkward meet and greet, as awkward as one can get considering that Ted is trying his hardest not to look anywhere within the vicinity of Mitch's crotch area. Eventually, Ted leaves the apartment, passes by Robin, who is still on the phone in the middle of a job interview, while she mouths apologies to Ted. And Ted walks into McLaren's, where the rest of the gang is sitting, and he tells them about Robin's date. Lily, though, mentions that the date had been going very badly, and upon hearing that Mitch, the terrible date that he is, had even at some point gone into the bathroom, Ted heads back up the apartment to confront Mitch, who basically explains that what he's doing at the moment is a movie he's perfected, which he calls The Naked Man. You see, when Mitch realizes that a date isn't going very well and that there's a high likelihood of there not being a repeat date, he finds a way to stage a distraction so he can get naked, and then he pops up in front of said date with the hope that they either find the situation funny and so have sex with him, or they fuck him out of pity, which, ew, gross. Upon hearing this, Ted heads back to McLaren's to tell the gang about Mitch's words, especially his claim that the move works 2 out of 3 times. Everyone is convinced that Robin will not fall for it. Hell, they believe that she's more likely to shoot Mitch than have sex with him. Eager to see if their assumption is right, they all race up the stairs to the apartment only to be met with the Wong restaurant sign, which is the makeshift do not disturb sex in progress sign that Robin and Ted had agreed on, hanging from the doorknob. Everyone heads back to McLaren's, mostly disappointed, except for Barney, who believes that this move is one that has revolutionized the one night stand ethos. Lily pulls Barney aside, of course, to ask why on earth he isn't upset about Robin having fallen for the naked man. To which Barney points out to her that the naked man being part of the one night stand lexicon transcends his feelings for Robin. Barney is an absolute dumbass, you all. Anyway, when Robin joins the crew, the rest of the gang post sex, clearly one that was not satisfactory to her, she tries to explain herself, only for Marshall to cut in and call her a slut and insist that the only reason why anyone should have sex with someone else should be true love and only true love. Which, Marshall Erickson, are you okay? Turns out that Marshall is dealing with all the extra emotions that come from him having been forced to read Nicholas Sparks's The Notebook, which is the secretary's book club pick at work for the month. The rest of the gang disagree with him, of course, and Lily even declares that she can name 50 reasons to have sex with someone, including trying to make your way through a soon to expire batch of condoms, breakup sex, angry sex, makeup sex, unable to fall asleep sex. The list goes on and on with the rest of the crew, including their own suggestions into the mix as well. When they get to reason 46, however, Lily is running out of steam whilst Barney tries to convince Ted that since he's going on his date with Vicky, also anyone else immediately thought of Victoria when Vicky is introduced herself as Vicky, or is that just me? Like, what is Vicky short for anyway? Is it Victoria? Anyway, back to Barney and Ted. Barney decides to pick up a woman at McLaren's and suggests that Ted try out the naked man with Vicky that night. Ted, though, insists that this is his first real date after Stella, and he's so not going the naked man route as he wants to see where this goes. But then later that night, Ted calls Barney to inform him that he too is going to be doing the naked man. Turns out that Vicky is rude to the wait staff and thinks it's hilarious for old people to trip downstairs. She's so cartoonishly vile and bitchy that it isn't even fun. And even when he thought the date could possibly be salvaged, when he noticed that she had a copy of his favorite book of poetry on her coffee table, the minute Vicky admits that someone she once dated owns it and she actually loathes the book, Ted takes the brief moment she walks out of the room to strip and pull off the naked man when she comes back in. Meanwhile, after Marshall calls her a slut for having had sex with Mitch, Robin decides to go on a second date with Mitch, who is absolutely horrid to her and basically tells her that he knows Robin is way out of his league and she's just here with him for a I'm not a slut date, and he doesn't think that they have a future together. On the other hand, Lily is still working on the list and makes it to number 50, with the last reason for having sex being because you love the person. Lily, just like Ted and Barney, also pulls off the naked man. Afterwards, the crew reunites in McLaren's. Turns out that Vicky did end up having sex with Ted, and of course, Lily and Marshall had sex Barney, though, didn't have the same luck, as when Marshall tries calling him, he instead reaches Barney's date, who called Barney a creep that got naked in her apartment, and she kicked him out and threatened to call the cops on him. After the call, she flushes the phone down the toilet. Barney, we then see, is outside in the street, naked, trying to make his way home. He stumbles on a rack of suits, and whilst he's at first relieved that he would have clothes to wear, upon realizing that the suits are too damn cheap and not to his standards, he walks away from them and continues to roam the city naked. I have no idea why he hasn't been picked up by the cops at this point. Surely someone should have reported him for indecent exposure, right? Right? He's butt naked. Anyway, Barney's fail confirmed that Mitch was right about the 2 out of 3 times success rate. Mitch, who by the way showed up with Robin, but when Marshall tells Robin that he's taking back what he said, due to him and Lily having had sex, thanks to the naked man, something that makes zero sense, by the way, and is in no way an apology to Robin. Robin sends Mitch off on his way, and Ted makes a toast to Mitch, whose theory of the naked man helped him get back into the game after Stella. The end. A couple of weeks ago, I made a video asking if it is possible that How I Met Your Mother hates Robin as a character, what with their continuous insistence on trying to humble her. Now, when I made that video, it was in response to the Sandcastles in the Sand episode, that is season 3, episode 16, when Robin regresses and starts acting like a teenage self who was still in love with her ex boyfriend Simon, played by James Van Der Beek. May he continue to rest in peace. Now, I mentioned how that episode stripped Robin of so much of her strength, her agency, her confidence in herself and her looks, the work she does, the community and friends she's built for herself. Because, the minute Simon walked into her life, she was back to being a 16-year-old in love for the first time. To be fair, I did receive some comments who pointed out that whilst I might have found it extremely difficult to buy into the regression storyline, it still worked narratively, and for some people, it made a lot of sense. And you know what? Maybe that is true. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I can see why and how some people might be able to tolerate that particular storyline. The naked man, however, I am sorry, but there is absolutely no justification for this. It read to me instead as the narrative wanting to punish Robin for one, not being the woman who wanted to be Ted's forever woman, and two, for her choosing to have sex with Barney because walk with me for a moment here. Ted has been positioned as the stereotypical nice guy within the story. He has a good job. He is funny and friendly. He's attractive. He's down to earth. He lives and works in New York City. And he's seemingly a decent guy. I say seemingly because anyone who is still friends with a character like Barney isn't really as great a person as one is meant to assume. Matter of fact, nice guys like Ted exist so that when propped up against assholes like Barney, they seem like the infinitely better option, not because they are inherently the best choice, but because compared to the devil that they hang out with, they end up practically being a saint. And of course, we are just meant to gloss over the reason as to why the saint is such good friends with the devil in the first place. But sorry, I digress. My bad. Back to what I was saying. Ted was positioned as the stereotypical good guy who ideally any woman would fall in love with and consider a blessing to be able to settle down with. He is meant to be the ideal, but Robin turned him down, and now she has no boyfriend, no apartment, and no job. Robin is currently at rock bottom in her life, and while she's still job searching, her attempts at dating have all been a bust. Enter Mitch, a man Robin is meeting for the first time that night. It is a blind date, and unknown to her, while she popped downstairs to take a job interview call, he chose instead to make himself at home, get naked with the hope that Robin would choose to have sex with him, either because she finds it funny or out of pity. There is the third possible option, though, that Mitch doesn't mention because the writers of the episode never want to address the elephant in the room, that is how questionable some of the actions of these characters are within the show. And the third reason, therefore, is the fact that maybe Robin would say yes to having sex because she's feeling vulnerable at that moment. I, of course, will go with the vulnerable route because I don't think it's a coincidence that Robin had sex with this stranger who she's not remotely attracted to minutes after what is most likely yet another failed job interview in the long list of callbacks she's received that she's desperately searching for a job in order to get her life back into a semblance of order. Because I would like to point out that other than when she regressed, back when she met the love of her 16-year-old life, Robin has had quite a great pick in the men she's hooked up with pre her and Ted becoming an item, and even after her breakup with Ted. I mean, there is the millionaire boyfriend, there's Sandy Rivers, there's Gael, the older surfer guy who everyone admits is pretty hot for an older guy. Everyone but Ted, of course, who sees him as a geriatric old man, but we know that that is just the jealousy talking. Outside of her ex, Simon, all of her hookups have been pretty top notch so far. Now, I'm sure some of you are curious as to why I would then say that the entire sequence of events with a naked man reads as the show punishing Robin for her breaking up with Ted and not wanting forever with him, when, like I said, the people she's been with post her breakup with Ted so far have also been pretty good catches. Well, for me, it is because of two things. One, the similarities that we are meant to see between Ted and Mitch. Now, before you come for my throat, please note that I am not saying that they are carbon copies of each other. Hell, Mitch physically does not look like Ted. However, he does have certain traits that would have you think, hey, this guy is like a Ted light. He's down to earth. He's unassuming. He tries at being funny, even though he's not a hilarious hoot. Probably also lives and works in New York and could also be read as a somewhat decent guy in the sense that he's not portrayed as a total asshole in the stereotypical sense. Until, of course, he pulls out the naked man. He is a version of Ted, the less cooler version of Ted, the version of Ted that ideally would not stand a chance with a total babe, 10 over 10 bombshell like Robin, which Mitch admits when he tells Ted, ends why he pulls out the naked man because since this was a blind date, he was fairly certain that he would never get a second date. And like he affirms to Robin later on in the episode, he doesn't believe he has anything going for him and could not even bring himself to bother trying to do better, even with Robin forcing herself to go on a date with him, a second date with him. So it really doesn't seem like she only had sex with him because he was naked. And yet, at the end of the episode, the writers have Ted practically deify him as this class talent whose wisdom has helped him step out of the rut that he had been in since Stella left him at the altar. Ted doesn't see anything wrong with what Mitch has done, and as a matter of fact, admires him for his choices and praises him for the lessons he has taught him. Some of you might think it's a reach, and maybe it is, but the way I read the scene, especially considering the fact that I saw Mitch as some sort of Timu store version of Theodore Evelyn Mosby, it felt like through Mitch, the writers were able to pull off. Look at you, Robin, giving it up for substandard Ted when you could have gotten the real deal. And that irks me, which brings me to the second part of this whole mess, Marshall calling Robin a slut. Now, I have said it several times on my channel that Marshall Erickson is my favorite of the McLaren 5. He is sweet, he is kind, he's a romantic, he has a good head on his shoulders, he loves his wife, and is usually a good friend when it comes down to things. But this episode, Marshall calling Robin a slut was such a shitty ass thing to do. And before you come and attempt to type up an epistle in my comments, kindly note that there is a difference between calling someone a slut fondly, well aware that this person has a ton of sex without judging them for it, because hey, some people like sex, calling them a slut with resignation. Accepting the fact that, hey, they have a ton of sex. That's something that they do and who they are. And you cannot really change it, even though, sometimes you're like, what the hell? Which is what Marshall often does with Barney, although he alternates with bits of the fun slot and resigned slot, making its way into his intonation when he's talking to Barney about his whorish ways. This is Miles vastly different from calling someone a slut derogatory, which is exactly what Marshall did with Robin in the episode. Under zero circumstances was that warranted. It was such a shitty thing to do, especially because he said it both times. And in both cases, you could see that Robin was so hurt. Now, before someone comes, well, she did have sex with Mitch, so the fuck what? Barney is a slut, and the intonation with which Marshall calls him that is vastly different from what he did with Robin. Ted has had quite the number of one night stands as well. Remember Pineapple Incident, girl? Ted didn't have any fucking memories of that night. Marshall cheered that on like Ted was like some sort of fucking sex stud or god. Or remember Mandy Moore's character in the Wait For It episode after his breakup with Robin? He got a fucking tramp tattoo. He got a fucking tramp stamp tattoo with her, for Christ's sake. Or remember when he had sex with the two friends? Not once in all of this situation has Marshall slung the word slut like this cudgel for him to be ashamed of his sexual choices at Ted. But with Robin, he gets to do that without even giving her a proper apology afterwards, which for me reads like the show is still punishing her for not staying in a proper, decent relationship with Ted, good boy Ted, and for having sex with Barney, which by extension makes her a slut. Because it felt like it was so completely out of left field. Doubly so because the episode does end with Barney, Ted, and Lily all collectively pulling off the naked man, although only Lily and Ted successfully pull it off. And when Ted succeeds, it's once again not something that he is judged for. Ultimately, Marshall has more smoke for the women who are victims of the naked man than he does for the person who is actually perpetrating the act. And that just says a lot. And before anybody wants to scoff at my use of the word victim, I would like to point out that it's a deliberate choice. Like I said earlier, I still am of the opinion that Robin was in a pretty vulnerable state. She just got off the phone for a job interview that she's desperate for. And here is this man she's only just met that day in the apartment she's sharing with Ted naked. Having sex with someone when your emotions are all fucked up like that and you have a shitload of things on your mind is not something you are completely, unequivocally consenting to. Just like petty sex is still sex that you've been pressured into having with someone. Enthusiastic consent is always the goal. And no, I do not believe anyone is getting that or giving that with the naked man. Plus, I cannot get over the fact that because of Marshall's comment, Robin forced herself into going on a date, a second date with this man who didn't even remember her name when she called, was 100% certain that he was the only one that got any pleasure from the sexual encounter that they had, as that is what happens whenever he bursts out the naked man. And we are not meant to read that entire sequence of events as some predatory shit. Really? And this is the guy that Ted deifies and practically canonizes at the end of the episode with the superhero imagery and shit. You have got to be shitting me. God, I am so sorry, Robin Shabasky. Between one of your friends calling you a slut in the most derogatory way possible, your other friend not even speaking up in your defense or calling him out for speaking to you like that, the piece of shit that was the lousy lay who never even attempted to give you any sort of pleasure in any way, and your ex deciding that that piece of shit is a savior in some fashion, you, my dearest baby girl, deserve so much better than the sheer mess that is the Naked Man episode. But of course, these are just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours. Whether or not you agree with me, please share them in the comments. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet, but enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels if they sound like something you might potentially, possibly be interested in. I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you tomorrow with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.